The tip for this week is how to seam a horizontal edge to a vertical edge. That is a bound-off edge to a selvage. And these use similar but slightly different techniques because they're a different type of edge. One is stitches, one is rows. And if you recall, the stitch and row ratio is different. Their stitches are fatter than rows are long, so there are fewer stitches in an inch than there are rows. And in the blog itself, I'm going to go into much more detail about the ratios. I'm going to use a ratio for seaming this, but I'm not going to explain why I use that ratio. I'll do that in the blog. Now, when you would use this in a practical instance is seaming a sleeve to shoulders. Or I guess there are instances where you might be seaming, say I did a cable band and I'm got stitches going the opposite direction, although normally you pick those up. But there are other instances where you might use this technique, but for the most part it's going to be seaming a sleeve into the shoulders. And notice I have got some pink yarn in here. You always want to know where the center of the sleeve is. That's what this represents. If this were an actual garment, I wouldn't need to mark where the shoulders are because there would be a shoulder seam there, but I've placed this so that I do have a center part. Now to get started, I'm going to go into the center of the stitch on the other side just to anchor this, and I'm going to come out of the first stitch on this side, and I'm going to leave a bit of a yarn tail because if I were to weave in the other direction I would need that. And I'm going to go into, or rather in under the horizontal bar on the others, to the left of center. I'm going to go in where I came out, taking care not to split the yarn, out, in, out. And if you're not familiar with how to seam vertical or horizontal edges, check out my blogs on those subjects where it goes into much more detail. I'm making the assumption that you know where you're placing the stitches. I use the horizontal bars on a vertical edge and I use the stitch itself on the horizontal edge. Now the ratio that I've chosen to use here is 4 rows for 3 stitches. So, or 5 rows for 4 stitches, sorry. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go under 2 horizontal bars, and this is 5 rows, 4 stitches. I'm going to continue on, and to accomplish that on the rows I just go under 2 horizontal bars as opposed to just 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So on the next one I'm going to go under 2, 1, and under 2. Now, like all of these types of mattress stitch seams, when you're finished you pull it tight, and that is going to give you a nice tidy edge. Okay? Now if I were doing this swatch for the master's program, I would do one side first and I would note my location. This should be centered on that piece for the master's program, and then I would make sure to mark it on this side so that it ends in the same spot. What this is similar to is sewing in a sleeve on a drop shoulder sweater, and you don't want to have the sleeve seam to different parts of the body. That would look really stupid. And then when I have finished one side, then I would just turn around and repeat on the other side using the threaded up, and I'd be off. Now and just be using the same technique and the same ratio. Now when you get to that other end, if it's not going to be in the same spot, you can tinker around with that ratio to make sure it works out, because again, it would look tacky if this end extended equally and this one ended right here. It should be centered on that piece.